when Jake's perfect roommate paid 3 months' rent up front and never seemed to sleep. He thought he'd hit the jackpot, until he discovered she wasn't from this world. Jake stared at his laptop screen, watching his bank balance drop lower each month. The numbers didn't lie. His part-time job at the university library barely covered his own expenses, let alone half the rent for his small downtown apartment. 3 months behind on payments, and his landlord was getting impatient. He had tried everything, posted ads on every website he could find, asked friends if they knew anyone looking for a place. Even considered moving back home with his parents, but that would mean giving up his graduate studies in space science. That wasn't happening. One more try, he muttered, typing up another roommate ad. This time he made it sound desperate because honestly he was. Need roommate ASAP. Small apartment near university. Quiet student preferred. Will consider anyone who can pay rent on time. He hit post and closed his laptop. Maybe tomorrow he'd start packing. The email came 3 hours later. Hi Jake, saw your ad. I can move in immediately and pay 3 months up front. Is that okay? Jake nearly choked on his coffee. 3 months up front. That never happened. He quickly typed back asking when they could meet. The reply came within minutes. Tonight if possible. I'll be there at 8 p.m. Something felt off about the whole thing, but Jake's empty wallet made the decision for him. He spent the rest of the day cleaning his apartment and wondering what kind of person could just move in somewhere, the same day they found it. At exactly 8 o'clock, there was a soft knock on his door. Jake opened it and forgot how to breathe. The woman standing in his hallway was stunning. Not just pretty, but stunning in a way that made him question if people could actually look like that in real life. Her skin was pale, almost glowing in the dim hallway light. Her hair was long and silver white, which should have looked strange on someone who appeared to be his age but somehow looked perfect. And her eyes, they seemed to shift color as she moved, going from deep blue to green to something he couldn't even name. You must be Jake, she said, and even her voice sounded different, musical with a slight accent he couldn't place. I'm Zara. Yeah, hi, come in. He stepped aside, trying not to stare as she walked past him. She moved like a dancer, every step perfectly placed. She carried only one piece of luggage, a sleek metallic suitcase that looked like it cost more than his entire semester's tuition. Everything about her seemed expensive and out of place in his shabby apartment. It's perfect, she said, looking around at his mismatched furniture and water-stained walls. Perfect? Really? Jake couldn't hide his surprise. Sometimes simple is exactly what you need. She smiled, and there was something in that smile that made him feel like she knew secrets about him that he didn't even know about himself. They sat down to go over the basic roommate stuff. Zara pulled out an envelope thick with cash and set it on his coffee table. Jake's eyes widened. He'd never seen that much money in person. 3 months, as promised, she said. I prefer to pay in advance. Where do you work? Jake asked, trying to sound casual. I mean, if you don't mind me asking. Consulting. I travel a lot for work, so I won't be here much during the day. It was a vague answer, but the money was real, and Jake wasn't in a position to be picky. They shook hands, and he was surprised by how cold her skin was. Do you have any questions about the apartment? Rules or anything? He asked. Just one. Do you mind if I rearrange my room a bit? I have some specific needs for my work setup. Sure, no problem. That night, Jake lay in bed listening to strange sounds from the room next door. It sounded like furniture being moved, but also something else. Humming, maybe? Or some kind of electronic noise? Whatever it was stopped around midnight, and the apartment went completely silent. The next few days were the best Jake had experienced in months. Zara was the ideal roommate. She kept her space clean, never hogged the bathroom, and somehow the refrigerator stayed stocked with amazing food that she told him to help himself to. But the more time he spent around her, the more questions piled up in his head. Like, how did she know he was studying space science when he'd never mentioned it? Or why did she stock the fridge with his favorite foods when he'd never told her what those were? And that first morning, when he'd stumbled to the kitchen half asleep, she'd already made coffee exactly how he liked it. When he asked how she knew, she just smiled and said she was good at reading people. Then there were the weird technical problems. His laptop kept glitching whenever she was nearby. The Wi-Fi would cut out randomly, and twice all the lights in the apartment had flickered when she walked through the room. Weird electrical problems in this building, she'd said with a shrug. The strangest thing was that he never saw her eat. The fridge stayed full. and sometimes he'd find evidence that she'd been cooking, pans in the sink, unfamiliar spices on the counter. But he never actually caught her having a meal, and she never seemed to sleep. He was a light sleeper, and he'd gotten used to hearing his neighbors through the thin walls. But Zara's room was always silent at night. No movement, no shifting in bed, nothing. A couple of times he'd gotten up for water and seen light under her door, but when he listened, there was no sound at all. Maybe she wears headphones, he told himself, but it still felt wrong. The really unsettling part was how perfect everything had become. His stress about money was gone. His apartment felt more comfortable somehow. Even his research was going better than it had in months. It was like having Zara around made everything in his life work smoother. By the end of the week, Jake was starting to feel paranoid. Nobody was this perfect. Nobody just showed up with exactly what you needed, right when you needed it most. And nobody looked like Zara and chose to live in a cramped apartment with a broke graduate student. He started paying closer attention to the little things. The way electronics acted up around her. How she never seemed surprised by anything, like she already knew what was going to happen. The fact that her skin was always cold even when the apartment was warm. And that smile. Every time he caught her looking at him, she had this particular smile. Not flirty exactly, but knowing. Like she was in on some joke that he didn't understand yet. It made him feel exposed, like she could see right through him. On Thursday night, Jake decided to test something. He waited until he was sure Zara was in her room, then quietly got up and walked to the kitchen for water. As he passed her door, he stopped and listened. Nothing. Complete silence. He pressed his ear closer to the door. Still nothing. No breathing, no movement, no sounds of someone sleeping. It was like the room was empty, but he could see light coming from under the door. A strange bluish light that didn't look like any lamp or computer screen he'd ever seen. Jake's heart started racing. Every logical part of his brain told him to walk away, go back to bed and mind his own business. Zara paid her rent, kept to herself, and hadn't caused any real problems. But the scientist in him couldn't let it go. Something wasn't normal here, and he needed to know what it was. Friday night, he decided to stay awake and see what was really going on. He lay in bed, listening carefully to every sound in the apartment. Around midnight, just like every other night, the strange humming sound started from Zara's room. This time, Jake got up and crept to his door. He opened it just a crack and peered down the hallway. The blue light was brighter now, seeping out from under her door and casting strange shadows on the walls. The humming sound was definitely electronic, but unlike anything he'd heard before. It pulsed in a rhythm that almost sounded like music. Jake stood there for what felt like hours, working up the courage to investigate further. Finally, curiosity won. He tiptoed down the hallway and carefully pressed his ear to Zara's door. What he heard made his blood freeze. It wasn't humming. It was voices. Multiple voices speaking in a language he'd never heard before, with sounds that didn't seem like they could come from human throats. And one of the voices was definitely Zara's. Jake's hands were shaking as he pressed his ear against the door. The voices were definitely real. One was Zara's, but the other sounded completely foreign. Not just speaking another language, but making sounds that seemed impossible for human vocal cords to produce. He had to see what was happening. Very slowly, Jake turned the door handle. It wasn't locked. The door opened just a crack, and what he saw inside made his knees go weak. Zara was floating, actually floating 3 feet above her bed, sitting in a meditation position with her legs crossed. Her eyes were closed, and her silver hair was moving gently around her face like she was underwater. The entire room was filled with that strange blue light, and it was coming from symbols that hung in the air around her. Glowing symbols that looked like no writing system Jake had ever seen. The voices weren't coming from other people in the room. They were coming from the symbols themselves, speaking in harmonious tones that created that musical humming sound he'd been hearing every night. Jake must have made a noise, because suddenly Zara's eyes opened. She looked directly at him through the crack in the door, and instead of being startled or angry, she just smiled. That same knowing smile she always gave him. The symbols vanished instantly. The blue light disappeared, and Zara gently floated down until she was sitting normally on her bed. "I was wondering when you'd finally look," she said calmly. Jake stumbled backward, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. This wasn't possible. People didn't float. Glowing symbols didn't appear in the air. This had to be some kind of trick, maybe some advanced technology he didn't understand. "Jake?" Zara's voice was gentle. "It's okay, come in. I think it's time we talked." Against every instinct screaming at him to run, Jake pushed the door open and stepped into her room. Everything looked normal now. Just a regular bedroom with regular furniture. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have thought he'd imagined the whole thing. What was that?" he managed to ask. "Communication," Zara said simply. "With my people." "Your people?" She patted the bed next to her. "Sit down. This is going to be a lot to take in." Jake remained standing. His legs felt like they might give out. But sitting down felt too much like accepting that this was really happening. "I'm not from here, Jake. Not from Earth." The words hung in the air between them. Jake's scientific mind immediately started rejecting what she was saying. Aliens didn't exist. And if they did, they certainly didn't look like beautiful women who answered roommate ads on the internet. "I know how it sounds," Zara continued, "but I'm from a star system about 40 light years from here. My people are called Lyrians. We've been watching Earth for a long time." "Watching Earth." Jake repeated the words slowly, trying to make them make sense. "Studying your species, learning about human culture and behavior. We're scientists like you." "This is crazy." Jake ran his hands through his hair. "This is completely insane. You're telling me you're an alien? I prefer to think of us as neighbors from very far away." Zara stood up and walked to her closet. She pulled out what looked like a small crystal device. When she touched it, the room filled again with that blue light, but softer this time, less overwhelming. "Let me show you," she said. Images began appearing in the light, not on a screen but floating in the air like holograms. Jake saw landscapes that definitely weren't from Earth. Purple skies with 3 moons, cities that seemed to be made of crystal and light, and people who looked almost human but not quite. They had the same ethereal quality as Zara, the same 2 perfect features. "That's my home," she said. "Or was my home, was? I was sent here as a scout. My job was to observe and report back. But something happened that we didn't expect. The images changed. Now Jake was looking at Earth from space, then closer views of cities, forests, oceans. Then the images focused on people. Humans going about their daily lives, working, laughing, arguing, crying. We thought humans were primitive," Zara said. "Emotional and chaotic. My people eliminated emotions from our society thousands of years ago. We reproduce through technology. We make decisions based on pure logic. We thought that made us superior. But watching humans, especially watching you, I realized we gave up something important when we eliminated emotions." The images shifted again, and Jake was shocked to see himself on his laptop, in his apartment, even walking to classes. She'd been watching him specifically. "You picked me?" he asked, feeling violated and fascinated at the same time. "Your research caught our attention first. You're studying the possibility of life in other star systems. You want to find us even though you don't know we exist yet. But then I started watching your daily life and I saw something my people had forgotten." "What?" "Passion. You care so deeply about everything. Your studies, your dreams, even small things like making sure you feed the stray cat outside your building. You feel everything so intensely, and instead of making you weak, it makes you stronger." Jake thought about the cat. He'd never mentioned feeding it to anyone. The fact that she knew about it should have been creepy, but somehow it felt like proof that she really had been paying attention to who he was as a person. "So you decided to what?" "Move in with me. I was supposed to observe from a distance. But I wanted to understand human emotions up close. I wanted to know what it felt like to care about someone." "And do you feel emotions now?" Zara's expression changed. For the first time since he'd known her, she looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. "I think so. I feel connected to you. When you're stressed about school or money, I want to fix it. When you smile, something inside me feels lighter. When that woman came by last week looking for you, I felt something sharp and unpleasant that I think was jealousy." Jake remembered. His ex-girlfriend had stopped by unexpectedly and Zara had answered the door. She'd been polite but cold, and somehow his ex had left after just a few minutes, saying she'd made a mistake coming by. "You made her leave." "I may have influenced her decision slightly." "How?" "Telepathic suggestion. Nothing harmful, just a strong feeling that she should go." The casual way she said it made Jake's head spin. Telepathy was real. Aliens were real. And one of them had been living in his apartment, learning to feel human emotions by watching him. "This is too much," he said. sitting down heavily on her bed. This is way too much to process. I know. And I'm sorry for deceiving you. But Jake, you have to understand, I've never felt anything like this before. My people, we don't have relationships the way humans do. We don't choose our partners based on attraction or affection. Everything is decided by logic and genetics. What are you saying? I'm saying that whatever this feeling is, this connection I have with you, it's completely foreign to my species. And I don't want to give it up. Jake looked at her, really looked at her. Even now, knowing what she was still the most beautiful person he'd ever seen. But more than that, over the past week, he'd started to care about her. Not just because she was stunning or mysterious, but because of the small moments. The way she listened intently when he talked about his research, how she seemed genuinely interested in human movies and books, the careful way she tried to understand jokes even when she didn't quite get them. So what happens now? He asked. I don't know. This was never part of the plan. Before Jake could respond, the crystal device in Zara's hand started pulsing with a different color light. Red, urgent, what's that? Zara's face went pale. It's a message from my ship. They want to know why I haven't reported in. Your ship? It's here in orbit around Earth. My people are expecting regular updates on human behavior and culture. I've been distracted. What happens if you don't report? They'll come looking for me. The device pulsed again, more insistently. And if they find you? Zara looked at Jake with an expression that was part fear, part determination. Then they'll want to know why their scout has developed emotional attachments to her subject, and they definitely won't understand why I've chosen to tell that subject the truth about who we are. The red pulsing from Zara's device was getting faster. She stared at it with a worried expression Jake had never seen on her face before. I have to answer them, she said quietly. If I don't, they'll send a retrieval team. What's a retrieval team? 3 of my people who specialize in finding lost scouts. They're not as flexible as I've become about human contact. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What does that mean exactly? It means they wouldn't hesitate to erase your memories of me. Or worse, if they decided you were a threat to our secrecy. The device pulsed again, and this time it made a soft chiming sound. Zara touched it reluctantly, and suddenly the room filled with that blue light again. But instead of peaceful floating symbols, harsh geometric patterns appeared in the air, and a voice spoke in that impossible alien language. Zara responded in the same language, her voice sounding more formal and cold than Jake had ever heard it. The conversation went back and forth for several minutes, and even though Jake couldn't understand the words, he could tell it wasn't going well. Finally, the light disappeared and Zara set the device down with shaking hands. What did they say? They're suspicious. I told them I was conducting extended deep cover observation, but they want a full report within 3 Earth days. Can you give them one? Zara looked at him with sad eyes. Not without telling them about you, about us, about how I've changed. Over the next few days, Jake tried to go back to his normal routine, but everything felt different. He couldn't concentrate in his classes. His research advisor asked if he was feeling okay. Even simple tasks like grocery shopping felt surreal when he knew his roommate was an alien scout who might disappear at any moment. The weirdest part was how normal Zara was acting. She still made that perfect coffee in the morning. She still asked about his day and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. She'd started watching movies with him in the evenings, and her reactions were hilarious. Action movies confused her because the physics were usually wrong. Comedies puzzled her because she didn't understand why humans found certain situations funny. But she loved documentaries about space and nature, asking endless questions about Earth's ecosystems. Your planet is so chaotic, she said one evening as they watched a documentary about weather patterns. But it's also incredibly beautiful. My world is very controlled. We eliminated most natural weather cycles centuries ago. Don't you miss the unpredictability? I didn't think I would. But now, yes, I think I do. Jake was learning things about her too. She wasn't just observing human emotions. She was experiencing them for the first time. When he mentioned that his research grant application had been rejected, she became genuinely angry on his behalf. They don't understand how important your work is, she said, pacing around the living room. You're trying to find life in the universe and they're worried about budget costs? It's how things work here. Science funding is competitive. It's stupid. Her indignation on his behalf was both touching and amusing, but it also made him realize how much danger she might be in. If her people found out she was developing these kinds of emotional responses, What would they do to her? The answer came sooner than he expected. 3 days after her communication with the ship, Jake came home from the library to find Zara frantically packing her strange metallic suitcase. What's happening? They're coming tonight. I couldn't give them the report they wanted, so they're sending a team to extract me. Extract you? Take me back to the ship for evaluation. They think something's wrong with me. Jake watched her throwing items into the suitcase with jerky, panicked movements. He'd never seen her lose her composure before. What can I do to help? Nothing. This is my problem, like hell it is. If they're coming here to our apartment, then it's my problem too. She stopped packing and looked at him. Our apartment? Yeah, our apartment. Something in his tone made her stand up and face him fully. Jake, you need to understand something. If they find out about my feelings for you, they won't just take me away. They'll consider you a contaminating influence. They'll either try to take you with us for study or they'll erase every memory you have of me. Then we don't let them find out. How? Jake's mind was racing. A week ago, the biggest problem in his life was paying rent. Now he was trying to figure out how to hide an alien relationship from other aliens. But as crazy as it sounded, he wasn't ready to give up. Not on Zara and not on whatever this was between them. Can you communicate with them from here? Yes, but then we control the meeting. Set it up for somewhere public, somewhere they can't just grab us and disappear. You don't understand. These aren't humans you can reason with. They're trained operatives who follow protocol exactly. Everyone can be reasoned with. Even aliens, Zara shook her head. My people eliminated emotions, remember? They don't understand concepts like love or loyalty or sacrifice. They only understand efficiency and logic. Then we speak their language. Before Zara could ask what he meant, there was a knock at the door. Not a normal knock. 3 precise raps followed by a pause, then 3 more. They both froze. They're here, Zara whispered. The knocking came again, exactly the same pattern. Jake looked through the peephole and saw 3 people standing in the hallway. They looked almost human, but something was off. They were too tall, too perfectly proportioned, and they all moved in exactly the same way. Don't answer it, Zara said. If we don't, they'll just come in anyway, won't they? She nodded reluctantly. Jake took a deep breath and opened the door. The 3 figures standing in his hallway were clearly from the same species as Zara, but they lacked her warmth entirely. They looked like beautiful, cold statues that had learned to walk. The one in front, who seemed to be their leader, looked past Jake as if he wasn't worth acknowledging. Scout Zara, the leader said in perfect, emotionless English. You will come with us now. Hello, Kale, Zara said, stepping up beside Jake. I wasn't expecting you so soon. Your reports have been inadequate. Command requires immediate debriefing. Jake noticed that none of them had asked to come in. They just stood there in the hallway waiting for Zara to comply. I've been conducting extended observation, Zara said. My research isn't complete. Your research was scheduled for completion 7 Earth days ago. You will return to the ship for evaluation. The way Kale said evaluation made it sound like a medical procedure. Jake stepped forward. Excuse me, but who are you people and what's this about? For the first time, Kale looked directly at Jake. His expression was cold and calculating, like he was examining a lab specimen. You are the human subject designated in Scout Zara's initial reports. Subject? Jake felt Zara tense beside him. This was going wrong fast. Jake Morrison, age 24, graduate student in astrophysics. You have been under observation as part of our cultural study. I've been under observation. Jake looked at Zara, who was staring at the floor. Of course. Did you think your association with Scout Zara was coincidence? The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. Everything between them, the perfect roommate situation, the growing friendship, even the feelings he thought were developing, had all been part of an alien research project. Jake, Zara said quietly, it's not what you think. But Jake was looking at Kale, who seemed satisfied with the effect his words had had. Scout Zara, you will return with us immediately for psychological evaluation. Your recent behavior indicates possible contamination by human emotional responses. And what about me? Jake asked, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. You will undergo memory modification to remove all knowledge of this contact. Standard protocol for civilian exposure. No. Zara stepped in front of Jake, facing the 3 aliens. He's not part of this. Leave him alone. Kale's expression didn't change, but Jake caught something that might have been surprise in his eyes. You are exhibiting protective behavior toward the subject. This confirms contamination. You will both return to the ship for processing. I said no. You do not have a choice in this matter. But as Kale reached toward Zara, something unexpected happened. The lights in the hallway began flickering. Then Jake's phone started buzzing with error messages. Then the elevator at the end of the hall made a grinding noise and stopped working entirely. Zara was unconsciously using her abilities, and her emotions were affecting the technology around them. Kale and his companions exchanged glances, the first sign of uncertainty Jake had seen from them. Emotional. Contamination is more severe than anticipated, Kyle said. Immediate extraction is required. That's when Jake made a decision that would change everything. Jake stepped between Zara and the three aliens, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The hallway lights were still flickering wildly, and he could feel electrical energy crackling in the air around Zara. Wait, he said to Kale. Before you take anyone anywhere, I want to understand something. Kyle looked at him with the same expression someone might use to examine an interesting insect. You have no authority in this matter. Human? Maybe not, but I have something you want, which is? Jake took a deep breath, hoping his gamble would pay off. Information. Real information about human behavior and emotions. Isn't that why you sent Zara here in the first place? The three aliens exchanged those same quick glances. Jake pressed on. You said she's been contaminated by human emotions. But what if that contamination is actually the breakthrough you were looking for? What if understanding emotions is the key to understanding humans? Emotions are inefficient, one of the other aliens said. They lead to poor decision-making and irrational behavior. Do they? Or do they lead to things your species can't achieve anymore? Jake was making it up as he went along, but he could see he had their attention now. Even Kale seemed to be listening. Like what? Kale asked. Innovation. Creativity. The ability to make leaps of logic that pure rationality can't reach. You've been studying humans for decades, right? And you still don't understand us. Maybe that's because you're trying to understand us with minds that can't feel what we feel. Behind him, Jake felt Zara's surprise. This wasn't what she'd expected him to say. But Zara can, he continued. She's experienced human emotions firsthand. She knows what it feels like to care about someone, to worry about them, to want to protect them. That makes her the most valuable scout you've ever had. It makes her compromised, Kale said, but his tone was less certain than before. Does it? Or does it make her the only one of your people who can truly understand humans? The lights in the hallway stopped flickering. Jake could feel some of the tension leaving Zara's body as she regained control of her abilities. You're suggesting we allow the contamination to continue? The third alien asked. I'm suggesting you consider that what you call contamination might actually be evolution. Kale studied Jake for a long moment. You are more intelligent than our initial assessments indicated. Thanks, I think. However, your proposal has significant complications. Scout Zara has violated multiple protocols. She has revealed our existence to a civilian. She has formed unauthorized emotional attachments. These actions cannot be overlooked. Then don't overlook them. Study them. Jake turned to look at Zara, who was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What if instead of taking her back for punishment, you made her your official ambassador to humanity? Someone who can bridge the gap between your species and ours? That would require authorization from the High Council, Kyle said. Then ask them. It would also require the human to submit to extensive testing and evaluation. Jake felt his stomach drop. What kind of testing? Psychological assessment. Biological analysis. Verification that you pose no threat to our operations. Jake, no, Zara said quickly. You don't understand what that means. They'd want to take you to their ship. Run experiments on you. You could be gone for months. Or, Kale added with what might have been the slightest hint of satisfaction, we could simply proceed with memory modification and return Scout Zara for standard disciplinary action. Jake looked back and forth between Zara and the three aliens. Every option seemed terrible, but doing nothing would definitely end with Zara being taken away and his memories being erased. There's a third option, he said finally. Which is, you let Zara continue her mission here on Earth with me as her liaison. She reports to you regularly about human behavior and emotions, but she does it from here. You get your research and nobody has to be taken anywhere or have their memories erased. That arrangement would be highly irregular, Kale said. So is an alien scout falling in love with her research subject. But here we are. The moment the words left his mouth, Jake realized what he'd just admitted, not just to the aliens, but to himself. And to Zara turned to stare at him, her eyes wide. "Love," she said softly. Jake felt his face burning. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know this whole thing started as a research project and maybe your feelings aren't even real, but they're real," Zara interrupted. "They're the most real thing I've ever experienced." "Fascinating," Kyle said, watching their interaction with scientific interest. "The emotional bond appears to be reciprocal." "It's not a lab experiment," Jake snapped. "It's two people who care about each other. You are not people. You are separate species. So what? We're both intelligent. We can both think and feel and make choices." "Choices," Kyle repeated. "Yes, that is something we eliminated from our society long ago. All decisions are made by logic and consensus. And how's that working out for you? When was the last time your people created something new? Made a discovery that surprised you? Felt joy about anything?" For the first time, Kale looked uncertain. "Joy is inefficient, is it? Or is it fuel for everything that makes life worth living?" Before Kale could answer, Jake heard something that made his blood freeze. Footsteps in the stairwell. Heavy boots moving fast and getting closer. "Someone's coming," he whispered. Zara grabbed his arm. "Government agents. They've been tracking unusual electromagnetic signatures in the area." "Our ship," one of the other aliens said to Kyle. "They've detected our ship." Suddenly Jake understood why the aliens had seemed so urgent about getting Zara back. They weren't just worried about her emotional contamination. They were worried about being discovered by human authorities. The footsteps were getting closer. Jake could hear voices now, official-sounding voices giving orders. "We need to leave immediately," Kale said to Zara. "All of us." "No," Jake said. "If you take off now, with government agents watching, you'll create an international incident. First contact between humans and aliens, but the wrong kind. The kind that starts with military responses and fear. Then what do you suggest?" Jake's mind was racing. The footsteps were almost at their floor now. "Zara, can you make us all invisible or something?" "Not invisible, but I can create a perception filter. Make them not notice us." "Do it." Zara closed her eyes and Jake felt a strange tingling sensation wash over him. The air around them seemed to shimmer slightly. The stairwell door burst open and 3 men in dark suits stepped into the hallway. They looked exactly like what Jake imagined government agents would look like. Serious, professional, and carrying equipment he didn't recognize. The agents walked right past them, as if they weren't there. Jake held his breath as one of them stopped directly in front of his apartment door and pulled out some kind of scanner. "Electromagnetic readings are strongest here," the agent said to his companions. "But they're fading fast. Source? Unknown. Could be experimental technology. We need to investigate the apartment." Jake watched in horror as one of the agents reached for his door handle. But before he could turn it, Zara made a small gesture with her hand and the agent suddenly stepped back. "On second thought, readings are dropping to normal levels. False alarm. You sure? Equipment malfunction. Happens sometimes with this model." The 3 agents turned and walked back toward the stairwell, their behavior suddenly casual and unconcerned. As soon as they were gone, the shimmer around Jake and the aliens disappeared, and he found himself breathing hard. "That was incredible," he said to Zara. "It won't work forever," she replied. "They'll be back with better equipment." Kyle looked at Zara with something that might have been respect. "Your abilities have improved significantly during your time here." "Emotions enhance psychic abilities," Zara explained. "The stronger I feel about something, the more power I can access." "Interesting. This data would be valuable to the council." Jake saw an opportunity. "Then let us provide you with that data. Give Zara permission to continue her research here, with me helping. You'll learn more about human emotions and how they affect your people than you ever could by taking her back to your ship." Kyle considered this. The council would require regular reports, detailed analysis of emotional responses, proof that this arrangement benefits our research objectives. "We can do that. And you, human, you would be willing to submit to non-invasive observation? Allow us to study how your emotions affect Zara's abilities?" Jake looked at Zara, who was watching him with an expression of hope mixed with fear. "Will it hurt her? No. But it will require you to be completely honest about your feelings and experiences. Our science demands accuracy." "I can do that." Kale nodded slowly. "I will present this proposal to the council. If they approve, Scout Zara will continue her mission under modified parameters. If they reject it, They won't reject it, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. This is too valuable an opportunity. We shall see. Kyle looked at Zara. You have 3 Earth days to prepare your initial emotional response report. Include detailed analysis of how human feelings have affected your abilities and decision-making processes. I understand. Kale and his companions turned toward the stairwell. Then Kale paused. One more thing. Scout Zara, the Council will want to know why you chose this particular human over all others on your planet. Zara looked at Jake. And that. 3 days later, Jake was pacing around the apartment, checking his phone every few minutes. Zara had been working nonstop on her report to the Council, and the stress was showing on both of them. What if they say no? Jake asked for the 10th time that morning. Then we'll figure something else out, Zara replied, but he could hear the worry in her voice. She was sitting at his kitchen table, surrounded by papers covered in those glowing alien symbols. She'd been translating her experiences into her people's scientific language, trying to explain human emotions in terms that a species without feelings could understand. How do you describe love to people who've never felt it? She'd asked him the night before. The same way you'd describe color to someone who's never seen it, I guess. You find comparisons they can understand. Now, watching her work, Jake realized how much she'd changed since that first night when he'd caught her floating in her room. She looked more human somehow, more connected to the physical world around her. She ate food now, even though she didn't need to. She slept at night, or at least pretended to. She'd started wearing his old college sweatshirts around the apartment. The communication device on the table started glowing blue. They're responding, Zara said quietly. Jake sat down across from her as the familiar symbols appeared in the air above the device. This time the conversation was longer than usual. Jake could tell from Zara's expressions that it was going better than expected, but he couldn't relax until it was over. Finally, the light faded and Zara set the device down. Well, Jake asked. They're fascinated, she said, and Jake could hear the amazement in her voice. The Council has never seen anything like the data I provided. They want to study the phenomenon further. That's good, right? It's better than good. They're creating a new research division specifically to study emotional enhancement of psychic abilities, and they want me to head it. Jake felt a moment of panic. From here? From here, with you as my research partner and cultural liaison. Jake stared at her. Research partner? Apparently your insights about emotions and creativity impressed them. They want to understand the human perspective on how feelings influence decision-making and problem-solving. So we get to stay together? We get to stay together. Jake stood up and pulled Zara into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen. She laughed, and the sound was completely human and completely joyful. There is one catch, she said when he put her down. What kind of catch? We'll have regular check-ins with other research teams. And eventually, if this project is successful, they'll want to establish formal contact between our species. First contact? Organized, peaceful first contact. With proper protocols and diplomatic procedures. No military involvement, no fear-based responses. Jake thought about the government agents who had almost discovered them. That's probably better than the alternative. Much better. Over the following weeks, Jake and Zara settled into their new roles. Zara taught him some basic alien technology, which he helped her integrate with human scientific methods. Together they started writing. Reports that bridge the gap between human emotional understanding and Lyrian logical analysis. Jake discovered that emotions didn't just enhance Zara's psychic abilities, they enhanced her intelligence in general. When she cared about solving a problem, she could think of solutions that pure logic never would have reached. When she was excited about a discovery, she could make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. Your feelings make you smarter, he told her one evening as they worked on a report about creativity and emotional investment. Not smarter, more complete. Logic is just one tool for understanding the universe. Emotions are another tool. Together, they're more powerful than either one alone. Is that what you're going to tell your people when they ask why you chose to stay? I'm going to tell them that I didn't choose to stay. I chose to grow. 6 months later, Jake came home from his classes to find Zara in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner. She'd gotten much better at it, but she still approached cooking like a science experiment, measuring everything precisely and following recipes exactly. How did your meeting with Professor Chen go? She asked, looking up from what appeared to be an attempt at spaghetti and meatballs. Good. Really good, actually. She's agreed to let me modify my thesis to include some of our joint research. Without mentioning the alien connection? Without mentioning the alien connection? I'm framing it as theoretical research into non-human intelligence and communication. Zara smiled. Technically accurate. The best kind of accurate. As they ate dinner, Zara told him about her latest communication with the council. The other research teams were reporting similar results. To theirs, Lyrian scouts who had developed emotional connections to their human subjects were showing enhanced abilities in creative thinking. They're starting to think that eliminating emotions from our society might have been a mistake, she said. What will they do about it?
Slowly reintroduce emotional education to our people.
Study how feelings can be integrated with logic rather than replacing it. It'll take generations, but they're willing to try. Because of what you discovered here? Because of what we discovered here. After dinner, they sat on the couch watching one of Zara's favorite documentaries, this one about ocean life. She was fascinated by Earth's biodiversity and the way different species had evolved to fill specific ecological niches. I've been thinking about something, she said during a segment about dolphins. What's that? My people sent me here to study human behavior, but I think the universe had a different plan. Which was? To teach us both that intelligence isn't about being the smartest or the most logical. It's about being willing to learn, to change, to connect with others even when they're different from you. Jake looked at her, curled up next to him on the couch, completely absorbed in learning about creatures she'd never seen before coming to Earth. 6 months ago, he'd been a lonely graduate student who could barely afford his rent. Now he was part of the most important research project in the galaxy, working with someone who'd given up her entire previous life to explore what it meant to feel. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Giving up your old life for this? Zara turned to look at him with that smile he'd come to know so well. But now he understood what it really meant. It wasn't ownership or possession. It was the joy of someone who had found their place in the universe and claimed it completely. How can I regret finding home? She said. The next morning, Jake woke up to the smell of coffee and something that might have been pancakes. He found Zara in the kitchen wearing one of his old t-shirts and dancing slightly to music only she could hear. Good morning, she said, turning to greet him. I got a message from the council this morning. Good news or bad news? Interesting news. They want to send 3 more scout teams to Earth. Long-term cultural immersion projects like mine. More alien roommates? More researchers studying human Lyrian emotional connections. They want to see if our results can be replicated. Jake poured himself coffee and watched Zara flip pancakes with intense concentration. She'd gotten much better at human tasks, but she still approached them with the methodical precision of a scientist. What did you tell them? I told them they'd need to be careful about choosing the right humans. Not everyone would be as accepting as you were. I wasn't that accepting. I spent the first week thinking you were too good to be true. You were right. I was too good to be true. That's why I had to become something real instead. As they ate breakfast, Jake thought about how much his life had changed. His research was going better than ever, inspired by insights from someone who looked at human behavior from a completely outside perspective. He had a relationship that challenged him to think about love and connection in ways he'd never imagined, and he was part of a project that might eventually change how 2 entire species understood themselves and each other. What are you thinking about? Zara asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Just wondering what happens next. Next, we keep learning, keep growing, keep figuring out how to build bridges between worlds that used to think they had nothing in common. Sounds like a pretty good plan. I thought so. As Jake got ready for his classes, he reflected on the incredible journey that had started with a simple roommate ad. He'd been looking for someone to help pay the rent, and instead he'd found someone who'd changed his entire understanding of what was possible. Zara called out from the kitchen as he was leaving. Jake, yeah? Thank you. For what? For choosing me back. Walking to campus that morning, Jake realized that Zara had been wrong about one thing. She hadn't chosen to stay on Earth for him, and he hadn't convinced her people to let her continue her research here. The universe had brought them together for a reason that was bigger than both of them. 2 beings from different worlds, learning that the space between logic and emotion wasn't empty. It was where real understanding lived, and they were just getting started.